Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining us for another edition of the Marketo User Group Roundup. And this month we're talking through all of the Marketo User Groups that happened in October of 2020. Pleased as always to have Warren Stokes, my co-host, join us for this event.
Howdy doody.
And we have a whole new panel of new presenters that are joining us this month for the different Marketo User Group sessions and for different MUG leaders. And so we'd love to welcome Blaine McMission from the Indianapolis MUG, Inga Romanoff, who co-leads the New York Marketo User Group, and Andrew Parker from Salt Lake City, who's running the Salt Lake City User Group. So love to be able to kind of get intros from all three of you and tell us a little bit about your Marketo user groups and your favorite Halloween costume, maybe is a fun question. So we'll start off with you, Inga, and just give us a bit of an intro to yourself. Oh, are you muted? Okay. Andrew, let's go with you first.
Okie dokies. Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Parker. I co-lead the Salt Lake City Marketo User Group with Trent Cross, who I think many of you know. So I'm the one in the shadows. Trent is the one who does all the cool stuff. I'm just there to support him basically. Anyway, Trent and I have been at that Marketo User Group for 7.5 years, almost 8 years now that we've been doing that together. So we've been doing it for a long time. Our user group is good size. You know, we usually have anywhere from 30 to 40 people register, and about as you would expect, about half of that to show up every month or so. And we're a little bummed this year because every December typically we throw a huge event, huge party that we do out in Salt Lake for most of the marketing community out here in Salt Lake. I think last year we had 400 or 500 people actually show up to our big event, and the year before that same. So and it's just a great way for us to kind of get out in the community and really work with a lot of folks there. But yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. I currently work for a company called Family Search International. We're a genealogical nonprofit, so basically ancestry, but nonprofit. We are funded by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So that's who I work for. That's my day job. And we use Salesforce Marketing Cloud actually at Family Search, but I have, after 2.5 years, convinced the entire church organization to move to Marketo. So we are in the process of doing that as a whole, and that is going to be beastly. So, but anyway, so I do all the I sit on the strategy side for nurturing and marketing on mission, journey building, and that kind of thing. But in any case, my favorite Halloween costume has to be my Jedi lightsaber. I'm going to turn it on here for you.
Whoa.
Oh my goodness.
So I bought this in Disneyland. So this is one of those like super expensive ones because I'm a total nerd. But my entire family went as Jedi this Halloween, and I've got 3 others that are just like this back here. So anyway, so that's my favorite Halloween costume.
That's
good to be with you guys.
Good. Glad to have you. Clearly we invited the right person for a Halloween edition.
You know what, like you should see the kind of stuff I've got next to me on my desk. You can only see this part, but this part is a nerd wonderland. So, it's fine.
Awesome. Well, on that note, let's go out to the jungles of Peru with with Blaine, and see what you've been up to. Did you go to Indiana Jones?
Actually, the jungle's in Costa Rica, actually. So yeah.
Mistake.
So I, Blaine McMission, I co-lead the Indianapolis User Group with Carolyn Graham, and been leading the group for about 5 years or so.
Right now.
And it's been sort of a small group over time. It seems like we've got people coming in and people going out, moving in and out of the area. I kind of tell people it's kind of hard. We don't have a ton of Marketo users in the area here because we're under the in the shadow of the Salesforce Marketing Cloud Tower. So it's like trying to get a Pepsi in Atlanta. So, but anyways, it's been good. We've had a lot of good companies here. So PFL is here locally as well as Lessonly and a lot of Sigster, and there's a lot of different companies that are kind of have their roots here in Indianapolis. But so it's been good. I come from really from well, I spent 14 years at Motorola and 20 years at Eli Lilly and Company, and now I'm an independent consultant. So I've done a lot in the area of healthcare, HIPAA, patient privacy, and all that kind of stuff in trying to integrate that with digital marketing as well. So the group's been pretty good as far as we have a few like consistent members and others coming in and out. So I think we probably have a distribution list that's in the 20 to 30 range. Most meetings are attended by just a handful of people, it seems lately. I haven't found that perfect time of day and the day of the week to kind of where people aren't busy or things aren't getting clobbered or overwritten by other meetings. I got to say that the virtual meetings have been a little bit easier for people to attend because Indianapolis is very spread out, from the acreage, square miles standpoint. So it's not. Usually people have to spend a fair amount of time to get there to visit. So favorite costume. Well, I wouldn't say it's Halloween costume, but so my wife and I like to people watch. So they have Comic-Con down in Indianapolis every now and then. So we've gone down there and watching things. And of all the creative costumes and the Jedis and, Predator costumes and all that kind of stuff, my favorite one there was Waldo from Where's Waldo? It was just classic. So, it's as simple as, simple classic kind of costume. So that was a lot of fun.
I can see that. That's awesome. Inga, you're a staple in the Marketo User Group community, and thank you so much for everything that you've done here. Can you give us an intro into some of the stuff that you and Sandy are doing in the New York User Group and costumes? What you do for Halloween?
Goodness, you can hear me now, right?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I think I muted myself, but then I couldn't unmute. First of all, I'm really happy to be among fellow nerds between the Comic-Con and the whole nerd setup. Andrew, my nerd setup is actually on this side. It's inside, you can't see it, but it's gonna come through one way or another. Nice. I promise. I think I've studied, I sort of come from the history of marketing automation world, and then I fell into Marketo's world in 2011, started a user group here. I co-lead the group with Jonathan Beaton. And New York is kind of an interesting crowd, I'll say that. We are perhaps not as sexy tacky as the West Coast. I've lived in San Francisco and had a lot of business. I am an independent consultant, have my own firm now. I'm not an administrator, to be clear. I am a practitioner, and actually having user groups is, of course, I give back. I feel like I give a lot of, I share a lot of knowledge, but it's also my way of learning what are the top problems for Marketo users. It's been actually very eye-opening in the pandemic as well. We've changed the format, and in New York, we used to do monthly meetings in person, and the groups used to be as large as 70, 80 people, and then they went down to maybe 35 after we moved to a new community format. But and New Yorkers love to get together, especially if you have drinks and food in the meeting. It's just a thing. It's a certain kind of culture. With pandemic, and maybe it's the format that we added onto the in-person meetings. We augmented it previously, but then with pandemic, we just started doing weekly meetings for users. They're smaller formats. I want to say anywhere from 5 to 10 people. Actually, 10 feels too many. Michael has been to many of those, and they're very informal. During in-person installments, we've actually done a few of those open forum, just ask questions kind of things. We peppered them throughout the topic ones that were actually, I guess, New York culture is very regimented. But these were informal, all user questions driven, or we set a topic. For example, if there's a new major release on Marketo that impacts everybody, we even, recorded them, made them maybe a bit more formal with an agenda. But for the most part, they're weekly installments of ask any question, no matter how complex, anywhere from strategy to operations to forms and however complex it might be. I actually found those very enlightening, to be honest. And as far as favorite costumes, well, that's a really tough one. It's not a fair question, I want to say. It's probably somewhere between a health worker and virus for us here in New York, or RBG. That's definitely very New York, and a tough choice between those two, between those three. And then my daughter is a cat, of course, and that's firm. There's no preferences other than that.
Nice, nice. Hey, Warren, do you want to chime in and kind of give an introduction to kind of some of the stuff that you're working on with the European virtual mug? And I don't know, somehow I kind of figure you have a costume set up for Halloween too, but.
Yeah, so you'd think that, but the UK literally doesn't do anything for Halloween. We're all too stubborn for that. I don't know what it is, or not fun enough. But we're not Halloween people really at all. I think it's you guys in the America that sort of brought that over and commercialized it, right?
It's just a good way for us to get candy, man.
Well, yeah, that's true. The smart way of getting candy. But I didn't actually have any costumes lined up. Mind you, though, I did go to, we had a Marketo champion one, whereas I dressed up as Kevin Lau, did his background,
Fair enough.
a face mask with him, and also had pre-recordings of him saying stuff as well, which freaked him out a little bit, but that was my costume.
That's excellent. Mine, I should have pulled up a photo of this. My favorite one wasn't from this year. It's a couple of years ago. I had a beagle back then, and so we went together as Charlie Brown and the Red Baron, Snoopy the Red Baron. So he had like a little red scarf and then some goggles that he put on. And I'll find it before the end of this event actually, and I'll do a screen share maybe at the end of it. So it's fodder for everybody to kind of stay tuned and come in through our conversation here. So. Okay, great. Well, let's thank you all for that. And it's kind of good to know a little bit about everybody too. One of the things about these virtual user groups, especially in the pandemic, is it gives you a chance to be able to interact with people. I've met so many new people and learned a lot about Marketo and marketing automation in the process of doing this over the past 3 years. And a background of me is that I run the manufacturing virtual Marketo user group, and we've been virtual since late 2017. So I think we were kind of an early adopter in the latest wave of Marketo virtual user groups. This hasn't been a lot of changes from my side of things, but really glad to have all the extra user groups and leaders that are part of this online discussion. I think it opens up to kind of Blaine and Andrew's points about kind of reaching a broader audience, maybe people that live in the suburbs or in rural areas around your cities. I think there's a lot that kind of comes out of this. So every month we do these meetings, and basically what we're going to do is we're really just looking at all the different mugs that are happening in the given month. So there's a lot of them. I can't remember from the numbers. I think there was more user group meetings than this, but and basically if you look at it, the cumulative amount of different hours that you'd have to spend watching all of the user groups is quite a lot. So Warren and I, when at the beginning of the year really got together and started going to all of these different Marketo user groups, and we thought it'd be a good idea and a good service to all of the different digital marketers who are more pressed for time to be able to have 1 hour where we'd all get together and be able to quickly recap all of these meetings. This way you can watch kind of the groups that are covering topics that are interesting or helpful to you in whatever project that you're doing, and also so that you have them available to be able to quickly get an index and go back to whatever topic that's important to you and kind of see what's coming up in the future as well, and be able to kind of figure out what groups you want to participate in. And so to that end, we've put all of these user groups onto one YouTube channel. You can join the YouTube channel by searching just Marketo Virtual User Groups on YouTube, or just a quick redirect. We have conversionstore.com/video, and that'll take you directly to the appropriate user group, and you'll be able to go ahead and sign up and subscribe. And if you're looking at this on YouTube in a recording, on the bottom right, I think it is, you'll see a Marketo icon, a white Marketo icon, and you can hover over that and subscribe to our channel, and click the bell icon and get updates for any Marketo user group meetings that are posted. And we have user groups leaders from all over the world that are putting on new content onto there at least a couple of times a week right now, and it's growing more and more as more and more user groups are proliferating during this time. So definitely encourage you to kind of join, and we'll cover off a couple of what some of the different events that are on that YouTube channel right now, so you'll be able to kind of get an understanding of what they are. Before we get into that, just a couple of notes and some housekeeping slides, really, and just an announcement that Adobe Summit is on for 2021, and the good people at Adobe have decided to keep the format in an online format for next year, and one of the things about that is so we won't be getting together in a conference room or a convention center like we do historically. But it also means that the event is going to be free for you to attend. So normally it's $2,000 to be able to get a ticket to Adobe Summit. And there's a lot of great learning that you learn all throughout Adobe Experience Manager, and all sorts of different experts, from user group leaders to Marketo champions to all sorts of different groups. And all that's available for free. It's April the 13th to the 15th. If you want more information, you can see summit.adobe.com, and that'll get you login instructions. And in the meantime, save those dates, and because they're full day sessions, there's a lot of content that's on there, and it's worth your while to bookmark some time away so that you can quickly dive in and really dig into all these different learning experiences. And this is where the latest information is on things that are happening within the Marketo ecosystem, and product updates and things like that. So definitely worth your while to attend. We have a calendar of upcoming events. So today we're talking about all of the previous events in October, but I put this slide together about a week ago, and I know there's a lot more sessions that are starting to be published here, but just want to kind of let you know that here on the next couple of weeks here, we already have Marketo user group leaders that are posting up sessions, and there'll be more that you can find at the mugs.marketo.com website. And they have a calendar there and all the different upcoming events. But later on today, in about 2 hours, we have the Silicon Valley and the Dallas Marketo user groups talking about the new Marketo user interface from the folks at Digital Pie, and kind of walking through that. And Kimberly Gallitz will be the speaker at that session, and we'll be kind of sitting down and kind of walking through some of the aesthetic changes. We have monthly meetings that are coming in from London, England, and from Montreal, Canada. So definitely a global, community that we have here. And we'll talk to a little later on about some of the different content that's coming in from Australia and New Zealand and that part of the world. On the 15th, San Francisco MUG is going to be hosting a session on advanced token tactics, and Seattle is going to start talking about attribution reporting and being able to kind of capture data for that as well too. So there's really a lot of different content coming in from a lot of different parts of the world, and delivered by experts in a lot of different areas around your MarTech stack. So it's definitely worth your while to sign up and to get involved in all of these different groups to participate. Anybody have anything that they want to add to this? Anything that they have seen in the upcoming events that they would recommend everybody who's watching this or attending to sign up for?
I would add one thing, actually. It's just that I discovered recently that Bevy, the mugs.marketo.com, has the search facility. So if you are looking for a problem, like if you're looking for something to be fixed, i.e. tokens, if you search tokens, it will bring up all of the user groups that are on there that have like look at tokens, and you can watch the recordings on there as well. So just a little tip there. Oh. I think we lost your sound there, Michael.
Oh, I was on mute. So yeah, I just wanted to say, like, we, have put on the New York hours every Wednesdays. We didn't put a separate line item on them, but it's Wednesday at 3:30 Eastern, if I remember correctly. And you guys always keep that set time if anybody has a ad hoc question that you can add there, right? Okay. And so so again, that's mugs.marketo.com. And then just kind of announcing a couple of notes for the upcoming sessions here. So November next month, we've already announced our panelists for that. So we'll be joined by Paul Wilson, who started the Microsoft Dynamics virtual mug quite a while ago, and really has been kind of a trendsetter and kind of an inspiration for the virtual space. He was doing this before I was doing it. Sanford Whiteman, who's Inga's co-host for the New York user group, and if you have questions about anything JavaScript and some of the more technical areas of Marketo, definitely the guy you want to talk to. And then Trent Cross, who's been a guest here previously, who's Andrew's co-leader in Salt Lake City, who's going to be joining us next month as well too. So excited to have all of them, and thank you, for them kind of participating in this as well, and kind of recapping all the sessions that we just showed you for November. And then one last thing, for the end of the year, right? 2020 has been quite the year. I think everybody will admit that. And so we're going to do a special Roundup edition just to kick you off into the holidays. And I'm sure, either you'll be celebrating whatever holiday that you celebrate. But at the very least, I think most people kind of take some time off, and a lot of businesses close down for at least a week there between Christmas and New Year's. And so why not have that as a good time to be able to kind of recap the whole 2020 year and talk about some of the different sessions that have happened in the Marketo User Group space across the year, and then looking forward into January in 2021. And so right now we have commitments from Brooke Bartos in the Chicago Marketo User Group, and Chelsea Kiko, who is a co-leader in the Cleveland Marketo User Group, and both well-respected champions across the community for many years. And then I've asked Marketo's leader, Adobe's leader, basically for the entire Marketo User Group program, Kelsey Bork, to join us for this discussion as well. And thought it'd be kind of a fun way to sort of have a little bit of a festive get together before we all take off for our respective holiday breaks, and to kind of recap the year. So excited to have them join us for one last discussion for 2020, and then we can move on to 2020, 21, and much better things. So excited for that. And also, Warren, it's a good way to kind of recap on all the time that and the work that we've done together this year too. So really appreciate you and your contributions to building out this program over the year.
Yeah, no, it's just definitely been an interesting year, and it's nice to see, like, you're so much more organized than I am. I feel like as a co-host, I should be more supportive here, but you've done such a great job in organizing these things out. So that's awesome to see.
I think one of the neat things too about a lot of this too is, Inga and Sandy and Andrew and Trent, you guys have great teamwork itself too. So what's it saying? Teamwork makes the dream work. All right. So go ahead.
I was going to say something like that. There's I was going to say one thing I did also want to quickly add is that the Champions program is now open as well, which if you don't know, especially this year, the Champions program has been just amazing community, and you called out Chelsea and Brooke on our December 14th Christmas roundup. They're both champions, and you can actively have a direct connection to them, which is definitely one of the biggest benefits for the Champions program. So I'll just definitely call out that as well for next year. The Champions program is now open.
I'll attest to that. I've been a champion 5 times and alumni twice. Highly recommend that. It's a huge addition to your career path, but really changes the way you think of Marketo and gives you, just like Warren said, gives you access to some of the brightest minds in the community. It's really an amazing connection to make. It does require work.
Let me ask you both a question about that, actually. I wish I had made a slide up for this. I'm glad you brought it up. But for people that are, would like to apply and, thinking about it, how do you know when you're ready to make an application, and what would you recommend that you put on that application to help you get approved?
The guidelines are actually very straightforward. And Warren, I'm sure that you have just looked at those. It's obviously not, I've just started using Marketo. You really have to have a valid MCE, which means if you've had it 5 years ago, you have to refresh it. So on the moment of the program evaluation, you must be an active MCE. You definitely have to participate in community and show your presence, contribute. It's not just given because you look pretty, although that's also not taken into consideration. But I think when you're ready, I think it is, you just have to read the rules and follow them. It does require some work. Like I said, the certification alone is probably about a year's worth of work. You have to have been a user and do some preparation. So it's probably not, if you just started, it's something to aspire to, but kind of put it out in your timeline. I'm going to say MCE is probably MCA or MCE, whatever you plan, is step number one. Warren, what would you say to how to define when you're ready?
So I asked myself, am I ready to commit and put into the Marketo community that everything is given back to me? And the answer was yes at that time. At that time, I'd been using Marketo for sort of six, 7 years now. So then I was ready I could do the MCE every time I renewed it, and I was confident in my ability. But one of the things I would say now about the Champions program is, because it's becoming harder and harder, is they've got 10 positions open, and they are looking just for something with a bit of difference. So if you feel like you've got a different use case or a different example of how you use Marketo that you've not heard on user groups, that's a definite forum to kind of go and apply there as well.
So when you're going in to do your application, you're putting in your technical details, you're putting in what you've done in the community. What did you, when you wrote your first, I think you have 400 words to be able to put your first application, and just kind of some highlights in terms of how you would frame that out if you were going to do an outline of what you'd put in there.
So just talk about the different clients that you'd worked with and your experiences, some of the interesting Marketo projects that you've done that are very different to, or not the normal standard things that you've done. So those specific example of the benefits, how you contribute to the Marketo community with specific examples, and reference other people that you've worked with that are very active in the community. All of that is taken into account. One of the things I would say there is a lot of consultants in there now, and they're always looking to have people that are like on the client side as well. So you stand a little bit of a heads up. So I've been reliably informed if you work a lot on client side.
And I guess another thing, probably it's really results oriented when you put in your application. So don't say, oh yeah, I got to work on this and this and that. It's not a resume. It really is very much what Marketo is, how I impacted the business, what I have done differently, or maybe what I've done just like best practices and it really worked. So it truly is very specific and results oriented. And I really like what Warren mentioned. If you did something differently and special and it worked, it's really important to share it with the community when you apply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Well, I'm, excited to see that conversation come in, and looking forward to kind of meeting the new leaders, the new champions as they get announced. let's dive into the calendar here. I realize we've got about half of the meeting left, maybe about half an hour or so here. But I've broken up these slides. There's so many user groups that are coming into play, and it's really great to see. So I've actually broken this up into two different slides. So we have the first half of the month and then the second half, and then kind of broken them out into different themes so we could just talk about them. And so I thought we would start off and really kind of hit the first half of the year first and kind of go through some of the different discussions that are happening here. I wonder, where we should start off with this. Warren, what do you think?
I mean, I was going to start with the San Francisco purely because I know the visible one is great, and for those of you who have visible kind of problems, that's certainly the place to go. It's certainly very specific, but the San Francisco one was the one that I attended, and I thought they'd done a really good job at like engagement. They had polls. You spoke about Paul Wilson, who's also presenting in December. He was on there presenting about the future of future updates to Marketo as well, because certainly everyone that in the community at the moment is either being onboarded on the new UI, and they take a very different slant about the trajectory of where Marketo is going, as opposed, so you can start to figure out in your own mind how you're going to then come up with future use cases, how you want to incorporate that into your tech stack, and just other things that you may be able to do in the future. So I really appreciate that San Francisco Mark, and there's a lot to be gained from that, even to see from the polls what other people think and other Marketo users think. So I really enjoyed that one. So I'd call out that, and that was on the 14th, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I think I joined that one too, and I think when they used Slido, that was for their presentation, but also had the polling and for that as well. I thought that was really interesting. I thought Paul's presentation was extremely interesting because of what they're trying to do inside of Adobe with the 4 instances that they have and trying to merge them together. So they're having to create middleware basically to move data in, because you can't rehome your Marketo instance to another CRM instance. So I think that was really interesting. He had an amazing architecture slide that was pretty interesting as well. But I thought that was quite interesting about that particular instance. Is definitely very complicated. And I thought so also he shared operationally how their team really is in between IT and the marketing department, and they fully support the marketing organization with as far as like supports, questions, and all that, so that they buffer kind of the marketing end user from the technical IT team. And I thought that was probably that was interesting.
As I remember from that conversation, he had a really large amount of custom objects, and I think there was a lot of
1,800, yeah. Because they maxed out the 800 custom fields that they're allowed to have, so in Salesforce, so they had that. So they went to custom object, and he said they had up to 1,800 custom objects trying to squeeze more data into their instance. So that was really interesting.
Just on that specific point, there's a blog recently by Amit Jain that has differences between custom objects and custom fields, etc. So I'd recommend that if you're not seeing anything from Amit, just on that specific point. So yeah, I just thought I'd call out that while we're on that topic.
Yeah, no, that's. I'm glad we're mentioning it. I think it's an area that a lot of people want to get into more so, and there's a different level of learning curve to get into that too. So it's a good session to be able to watch the recording of, and kind of grateful for Paul and for the Marketo internal team at Marketo for being able to kind of talk openly about what they've done or what they've done historically and what they're planning to do here.
Michael, I think you need to unmute microphone for him.
Have you, can you hear me now?
No, Andrew's microphone, we're not allowed to, when we mute, we can't unmute. So you need to unmute Andrew.
Oh, okay. let me take a look here. You should we should have undone that here.
Tried to be courteous by turning your microphone off, and we got locked out.
Yeah. Andrew, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. I've been on mute. I was being patient. I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. So.
Oh, okay.
I was impatient for you.
I appreciate that. I'll send you cookies later.
Oh, here we go. Okay, I've set you guys up so you can unmute now. My apologies for that. We keep with
Yeah,
all these Zoom meetings, it keeps changing and unchanging, right? So you
yeah.
should be good
Yeah.
now. Go ahead,
Yep.
Andrew. Good points.
Oh no, please go ahead. I was just I was just
I was waiting for the
go ahead.
transition.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, let's dive in then in terms of some of the Phoenix one. I haven't gone to the Phoenix one yet and seen that, but I'd love to talk about the topic of what's working in 2020. I thought that was a creative idea. And if any of you have been, please chime in. But in general, I'd like to hear kind of how you've shifted some of the tactics that you're using this year to make sure that that you're adapting to some of the changes that are happening. It's kind of a unique year in general in marketing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, Inga, after you, sorry.
Yeah.
Is it a
Yeah.
unique year in marketing? I
Uh,
think it completely changed the way we do marketing this year, and it probably will stay this way. In B2B, we can no longer infer data. We can't track IP addresses. I think engagement is actually very different. That's across consumer and B2B. In my opinion, some of this was random and probably caused by the shift out of the office into the home environment that was completely unscheduled and also disorganized. But some of it was also part of, it was like an impending evolution of how we do marketing. So things that were good to do before, I don't know how many of you remember the Marketo, the two tribes of marketers that was inspired by GDPR regulation, but it ultimately was about how do we do marketing better. It's funny how that approach of having to be more strategic and to do marketing better and be more enticing and sort of starting the conversations as opposed to pushing them almost became a must in 2020. And I've also seen, so as a consultancy, we work across different business varieties of different industries. Actually, a lot of them are manufacturing, Michael. But seeing the same pattern where most of our projects, maybe about 80% of them are more strategic. In 2020, upon pandemic, with pandemic upon us, 80% of our projects became operational. And it was probably, let's call it crazy technical term, March to May. And then it just continued to be so much more operational and less perhaps innovation and strategy. People just had to sort of churn out, even if it was a nurture, something that we would consider more strategic, it just by nature of how it was done, it was more operational. It was a much shortened time for all of the projects. They had a little bit less preparation and just, I don't want to call it chaotic because it wasn't really chaotic. It was just, let's get a lot more things done, much shorter period of time and see how it works. It doesn't work. And let's continue changing. One of our clients stopped sending any emails in June and July because there was no engagement. And it picked back up, but I don't think the nature of business has changed. I'm really curious to hear what everybody else has seen and what you think about 2020, which is probably going to be 2 years. 2020 is going to be 2 years this year.
I was going to say, like, you can't get away with doing crappy marketing in 2020 because it's going to come back and bite you. So those companies that have historically relied on events to gain a lot of their leads, when they're suddenly in the realm of, oh, we should churn out another webinar. I'm seeing a lot of degradation now where it's like, okay, we can't just keep doing the same thing. We've got to look to maybe our campaign ops team. So some of the listeners on the air at the moment, like they may have, there's opportunities there to be creative now with campaign ops about really to have an input into things that you can test. There's also almost what I would say the reset button on some of the existing tests on where to send as well, and the best time to send it. And an example would be we had the same sign-ups for different stuff on Sunday sends now, whereas we never got that before. So it's a really interesting layout to kind of look back at your historic tests that you did do and have a play around with those again, because you might not get the same results.
Mhm.
Yeah, from my perspective, out here in Salt Lake, we've got, in addition to my day job, I do some moonlighting on for some Marketo clients out here, and for us, it's really accelerated uh, the push towards more personalized nurturing. Everything nurturing has been so linear for so many of my clients for so long, and especially at my current job, even it's still very linear, right? It's like if you do this and then you do this, it's just and it's not. 2020 has proven, at least so far for us, is that when we've tried to do linear nurturing, it just blows up in our face because everybody's like, well, of course you said that yesterday, like give me something interesting or new or different. um, and so it's really forced us to think differently about the way that we use nurturing campaigns, not just in the channels that we use, but the messaging too, right? It becomes more of an experience with people, much less so than some sort of just sequential broadcast. So for us, it's really accelerated that like Inga said, trying to figure out how do we both start a conversation and keep a conversation going like, oh, I don't know, a regular human. So it's made a difference.
I think
Right.
some of the things that from some of the teams I've worked with, one of the biggest changes that I saw that happened this year was the whole virtual meeting explosion. And part of it, so we did some work for state and local governments who were doing, they had a number of conferences and symposia that were normally face to face. And they came and they're like last minute, like, oh, we need to go online. We need to do a virtual, conference. We had to, kind of deploy. We didn't have the luxury of integration or a lot of money to go after a C-band or something like that. So we had to be creative with the Marketo instance that we had. So we set up all of the GoToWebinar events as separate programs. So then we just had to put a big front end, default program as a registration program, get people registered, and then daisy chain all of the program registration. So we just passed somebody all the way through, that waterfall through all of the programs to register everybody into each event. And that was sort of a creative use of what you have available to you. And I think a lot of people probably saw those types of things this year where it's like, the apple cart was definitely, turned over and people had to figure out what to do now. But I think that was probably another observation from 2020 that I've seen.
Yeah. All right, guys. Just looking at the time here, we're just flying through the hour. So we're gonna pick it up pretty quick here because we have a lot of groups to cover. But let's call out a couple of these other conversations. So we had a really interesting conversation with Knak, and that one is on recording. I think it's best to just it's Blaine and I really having a chat with
Brendan.
Brendan,
yeah. And that was a really good discussion. Want to talk quickly about the European mug, and I did for the Charlotte mug, I did a quick series on welcome nurtures, and just from more of a content marketing perspective. And Charlotte's just rebooting actually, so it was really neat. It was just it's Christine Salvaggio and Courtney Toby, who's newest addition to the Marketo User Group community. I'm just talking through that. But when you had a huge panel of all sorts of different experts that you had brought together to do fresh starts to Marketo implementations. And so maybe that's a good one because we've all, had to kind of stand up a Marketo implementation or work with one that's kind of at an early phase. So what kind of insights did we see come out of that discussion, guys?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we conducted that one is we had a superstar panel. So we had Jules James, we had Andy Karen, we had Brooke Bartos, and Chloe Pott as well. I feel like I'm missing someone, but I'm not sure because the panel was that star-studded. But we just addressed every part of moving into a new instance, whether it's part of a new job, part of a migration, part of a change from a different technology like Pardot over to Marketo. So we really looked at everything. We tried to pack as much in and try and get as much out of our speakers as possible. So yeah, that recording is online, but if you're moving job or you've got a migration or anything, we've tackled all of those different questions. So there's a lot packed into that hour. So. Oh, Michael, you're on mute.
Can't hear you.
Okay, my apologies, guys. It was quite a day. I really have to work on this now. This normally doesn't happen, but let's go into the second half of this and make sure that we give some good exposure to some of the user groups in the last half of the month. And I feel like we see a pattern where the last half kind of picks up more so, and we have more content that comes in. So where do we go? Let's talk about North America, and Amanda Thomas was doing a session on implementing customer lifecycles. I was at that one. Did anybody else attend that one?
No, I didn't, but I've seen Amanda present on that topic before, and she is a real expert at the life cycle things. So that's if I know anything about Amanda, that's definitely worth either catching the recording on or yeah, I guess if you see that one come up again.
What I would recommend too is when you're looking at these, I loved it because I was talking about kind of one phase of the customer lifecycle process for what you do after your closed one, and some of the stages maybe beyond that. And Amanda's session, I felt like it really complemented that because she went in, I went in more from the content side of things, but Amanda went in more from the data side of things. And how do you identify the different stages inside of your customer lifecycle? What are some of the different variations you could have on that? And so I think they complement each other, and I would highly recommend if you're going to watch one, watch the other one. And I think those are different pieces, right? Is you know, how do you define the stages, and then what do you say to the people that are at those different stages inside of your life cycle to be able to move them along through that success path, right? So highly recommend that. What else? Blaine, you were at Raleigh, Durham. Want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, Raleigh, it was really a kind of a discussion. It was really interesting. They kind of went through the release notes first, which was quite interesting. And general consensus is nobody needs to send 5 million emails per hour, but that's a new upgrade, I guess. But there was a number of things that they talked about that were also interesting, just about new features. Some of the Salesforce Sync dashboard seems to be, you know, going well. But they spent a little time talking about the new UI. And I thought I learned a few things that were interesting there. They said that primarily that the icons, you know, there were some complaints about the icons being hard to understand what they are, but turns out there is a hover description on some of them as well. And they also, you know, mentioned that, you know, there are some beta users for the UI, but you can't be a beta user if you use workspaces and things like that. Also, there was discussions about all of us need to go in and upvote them putting a description on the tabs, because apparently when you open all of the Marketo tabs in the new UI have no different names, they're all the same. So they wanted to, you know, we need to upload a feature on that. Talked a little bit about a Chrome plugin that's needed for the UI, at least it may be for the beta version. But I think that was some of the interesting things about the UI. But I think, you know, one of the upcoming mugs here would probably cover all of that in much more detail. So that was some of the highlights that I saw from that. You mentioned during that mug there was something about a webhook for Marketo and Google Analytics. So that may be something that I noted that down. I need to follow up with you and get that little tidbit. But I think that was the biggest thing about it. It was like just a discussion of tips and tricks and things that people have observed. And I think those are really nice meetings too, because it's less about a presentation, more about the dialogue. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I want to, you know, jump to Twin Cities for a second here and talk about that Marketo Google Analytics integrate. That was really neat. It was a presentation about how to be able to take the data that's in your Marketo instance and use webhooks to be able to push it to Google Analytics to create, they had, I think it was custom fields inside of Google Analytics so that you can then take your Google Analytics data and then parse it out by dimensions. and be able to look at it under kind of some of the data that we have in Marketo, and be able to kind of use that to be able to slice and dice your Google Analytics data by better levels. And you know, it's something new. I hadn't really seen that before. I don't know if anybody else here has done something like that, but I thought that was really creative, and it was a good kind of a good way to use both platforms in ways that that were pretty unique. Go ahead.
I've not seen anything similar to that, but I am seeing now some of the, just generally the Marketo user groups being more like sometimes flipping between technical and strategic, because we're missing that that conversational piece where you'd be in a room with people and be able to chat with different ideas. So I'm really enjoying some of those more technical ones. And to Blaine's point, actually, on what he was talking about before, just hearing about the different ideas around how people are using the UI in different ways as well, which is loosely tied to how that connection is working.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the new UI, so that, again, that session, Silicon Valley's running a session in 2 hours from now that you can attend on the Bevy section on that. It's interesting to see kind of the conversations that are coming in from this too. So I think we're seeing that pretty frequent throughout all of the different presentations. One piece I want to jump to here is Brooke Bartos' session for the Washington, D.C. mug, and Helen Abramova and Tiffany are running that one. And they have a lot of really interesting content. And Brooke dived into a pretty deep dive, and Brooke's very thorough, and it is definitely somebody that has been a champion for many years that you want to when she's giving advice on things, that's a session you want to attend for sure. But was just talking about accessibility, which is definitely a piece of why the UI is being redone. They'll have new accessibility features that are built into it to make it easier for people who are low vision to see. But who was on the designing email for accessibility piece, or maybe seen some of the content around building email for that?
I was in on that, but I'll let others speak up if they're
I missed that one. I was bummed looking at some of the couple of these that I did miss. I feel like I've missed out this month on a couple, but there is still recordings online. Just want to. I was going to say, Inga, you must have had at least some experience of like some of these bits that are being brought out in the user groups, right? Or
for accessibility, what do you mean specifically?
So I'm just talking about if you've been, if you've actually undertaken any of the projects that are quite aligned to some of these design, like some of these email structures and building out the structure of the tree, and how that stuff is. I'm just kind of curious, like what your thoughts are, seeing some of these more technical Marketo user groups come out. I thought you'd be the one to.
It's interesting, even though a lot of our projects are quite strategic, the user group, I guess the direction we've taken with the weekly meetings is actually specifically designed to be super technical, and you'll be surprised how many very technical questions there are. So with some of this, I guess may have been Andrew who mentioned somebody did like release notes review, I can't remember. Those are the types that we would actually deep dive and record, but I feel like with technical side of things, we're actually about to publish the 20 technical tricks you didn't know about in Marketo, because I don't know, there's just not enough documentation, even for things that are very simple, like something like you never have to change your copyright year, which is what every company does every year. Imagine the amount of hours if you have hundreds and hundreds of emails and you have to redo that. And Marketo just released a new, well, before you could use velocity code to do that, that you never had to change copyright year. As of February this year, Marketo actually has a system token you can use. So it's not even that complicated, and it's not really known. So interestingly enough, so we deep dive into more technical types of questions, whether it's specific email structure, even if it's email deliverability level of technical. I think Michael has been to a lot of these. Some of them have to do deeper with forms and pages and things that we as marketers don't want to think about, but we can live without answering those questions because we just don't get the data we need.
I think what I
Yeah,
always like of your sessions, Inga, is that you know, they are technical, but they go, the technicalities on them are beyond Marketo. It's more about how to deal with the corporate technical infrastructure that exists in many different clients, from web servers to domain name servers to you know, there are things that, obviously, reading the Marketo documentation and understanding the Marketo platform is one thing, but you also need to know, you know, how the people that you're communicating with, right? If you're communicating with to a large group of Gmail account holders, that's going to have different nuances than when other spaces. So really having that broader understanding of IT in general is kind of a good skill there. And I want to pivot on that for a
I
second.
guess it's actually useful, Michael, to know that Sanford, well, was IT, maybe a little bit IT now. I was a developer, and I understand that from inside out. And I mean, one of the things that we brought up was death by API. Some of you in companies deal with IT team who think they know Marketo because they read some part of the documentation that literally, like, it looks like maybe it's Mandrill or MailChimp, and they think that's all it does, but it's actually a pretty lousy ISP, a pretty lousy ESP, email service provider, but a fantastic marketing automation. And I think those are the kinds of things that we usually focus on. So it's technical, super technical, yes, but it's, I guess, first of all, it's explained in human terms, and then we cover things that are technical but have to do with how to make it work in a large organization without, you know, hurting anyone.
Yeah. So it parallels now. I just want to jump back to a couple of these other meetings, and I recognize we're kind of hitting the end of our time here, but you know, speaking to that point, so I love going to your group because of the technical expertise here. I would also say that for those of you who can do either a later night in North America or invest the time, it's worth your while to go to this Australia virtual mug and to talk to some of the Australians. So Blueprint X runs a lot of those. Veronica Holmes, who was on our panel a couple of months ago, is part of the team that is launching the Australia virtual mug. They're amazing when it comes to some of the technical things that they're doing in their Marketo instances. They're great at code. They're great at scripting. They're building a landing page editor that ties into the Marketo user interface natively. So they're doing a lot of things there. I didn't make it to their launch. I really wish I had it. It was like 9 o'clock at night my time, and I think for Warren it's like 3 in the morning or something your time. But you
No
know,
chance.
yeah, definitely worth watching and kind of keeping up with what they're doing there, and then also what the New Zealand cohort is doing, you know, next door to them. They're the two of those groups, and all the different groups around them. It's a late hour, but it's well worth the investment to go. Um, Gosh, we're running out of time here. I will just quickly note, you know, thanks to Saurabh Gupta for speaking at my Marketo virtual user group about doing a data privacy briefing. And he's talking about updates to the privacy legislation that's happening in India and in Brazil. And then Andrew, can you just talk quickly about your session on database decay for your mug?
Yeah, we had a really good discussion there with Drift. They came in and presented to us there, and I think they've come and presented to a few others. I know they've got one next week, and I'm trying to remember which mug it is, but regardless, we had a really good conversation. I think the thing that was, we've been talking a little bit about how Marketo user groups are kind of switching back and forth between both the strategic and the technical side of things. That conversation really had it all, I think, in that regard. We spent a lot of time kind of talking about the strategic way to kind of set up your database so that the decay in there can be a little bit mitigated, right? Prevention is always easier than rehabilitation. So, so we spent some time kind of discussing that. But then we kind of got into some real specifics and technicals around how to handle, how to really put a methodology behind handling soft bounces and hard bounces. as opposed to just kind of saying, well, if they've hard bounced, you get them out. The Drift folks have a really good methodology around that, and giving those email addresses a chance to kind of live in a space where they could potentially come back, but also be able to be removed from the database if they need to. So it's worth the time. I know we're at time, so I don't want to take up too much time, but it's worth the time to kind of go and watch that, and where we talk a little bit strategically at first, and then really kind of dive into the technical side of keeping the database clean.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, listen, I want to respect everybody's time. So thank you so much for taking the time out and to be able to cover off these Marketo user groups sessions. So our next session will be Tuesday, December the 1st. So we always do it the first weekday of every month. Again, Paul Wilson, Sanford Whiteman, and Trent Cross will be joining us to be able to recap all of these meetings that are coming up here in November. We hope to see you in a couple of hours for the San Francisco MUG session on the new user interface. And thank you so much for attending. And we will keep an eye on mugs.marketo.com for new events that are coming up. And feel free to drop the conversionstory.com/videos to look at the YouTube channel. And thanks again for attending, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.